everybody. Welcome live to the Jim Masters Show, live entertainment, lifestyle, celebrity talk show series. We are live. Good to see everybody here. Reporting for duty, Jim Masters in the host chair. You guys reporting for duty as well as viewers, and gonna have a good time with us. We've got an extraordinary, talented individual who is not only a singer, songwriter, musician, and leader of the band Chapell, but also he is a technology privacy attorney on top of it, right? So we made sure we had all the checks and balances in line before we went live. We checked with Alan to make sure everything was good. And thanks for joining us, everybody, watching all around the world. I'm your host, Jim Masters. We always have a good time. And if you haven't perused all of our other episodes, binge watched all the episodes, oh boy, it may take a little time. There's about 1,200 or so past episodes with incredible guests coming in literally from all around the world. We work very hard to put these shows together, and it gets a little crazy sometimes. Like a day like today, I was straight out all day on the radio hosting shows. Then we were booking TV shoots in South Dakota and coming up in Canada. And it's just one of those days where the phone was ringing all day and the texts were coming in, and I was on location and I was on the computer and in the studio. And, there wasn't enough of me. I had to clone myself today. So it was one of those days, but we are here in the host chair to greet all of you, welcome all of you, and of course, entertain you as well. Let us know you're here. Drop a line, leave a comment in the comments section, subscribe to the YouTube channel, Jim Masters TV. Give this episode a like and all the ones you enjoy. Share the episodes on your social media. And if you want to comment live when the show is live, which it is right now, live, coming to you from the New York area in the USA, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and you can comment in what we call our Lovely Hall exclusive chat room. That is a chat room we have designed for the viewers that are watching live who want to say hello to one another, mingle with one another. Maybe they exchange recipes, they say hello to each other, they root for each other, sort of our lovely squad, as we call them, and they say hello to me and our guest as well, which we appreciate. But if you miss doing that, again, subscribe to the channel, Jim Masters TV, and it's a bonus, free bonus. You can chat right now in the chat room with everybody. We can see those comments. Sometimes we even sprinkle one or two on the screen sometimes, a little special bonus. Not every show does that, but we like to do that when we can. And of course, leave a comment for us as well as you're going along in the comments section on the YouTube channel. With all that said, boy, do we have a terrific guest joining us again. Coming to us from New York City, Alan is in the house, and I'm very excited to have him here. Do you know his albums are currently being played in over 150 radio stations in the U.S., that he's performed at Sony Hall in New York City, supporting Everclear, that he's shared the stage with a variety of rock icons, Gin Blossoms and Little River Band and Tim Reynolds and Edgar Winter and Bighead Todd and so many others. Was touring the Northeastern United States, playing mostly rooms of 400 to 800 capacity and averaging over 50,000 monthly listeners and listening happening on Spotify. Yeah, really cool stuff. Alan is a New York City and Northern California attorney, industry analyst, focusing on privacy within the digital media and technology landscape. But he began his career as a boutique direct marketing agent professional in Stamford, Connecticut in the 90s, but also is quite the musician. This band of his is very, very popular, and wherever they go, people can't get enough of them, which I think is really, really cool. He grew up in the multi-ethnic streets of Stamford and was exposed to a multitude of music, playing piano and trumpet before the age of 6. And at the age of 15, he recorded with legendary producer Jimmy Heiner. And that's, of course, Dirty Dancing and Kiss, The Raspberries, and more. You may remember we had John DiNicola on our show, who was co-writer of the Dirty Dancing song, I've Had the Time of My Life, and also Hungry Eyes. If you missed that episode, it was just on the other night. And more recently, Alan, working with Talking Heads, Jerry Harrison, he's played to jam-packed houses around the world, from Mumbai to Miami and across the U.S. And people just love the band. They love him, and they have a good time. There's a lot of great music out there, new music as well. We're going to talk about that. And it's really cool. I like the fact that he, in addition to doing, the music, that he's involved in technology privacy. He's God, he's got to be so busy just with that alone, right? Because of just how crazy things are today. He also has worked and wrote, we talk a lot sometimes about jingles, and he's worked in the jingle area as well. And I think that's really, really cool. We love jingles and television and all kinds of cool things. We're going to talk about that and lots more. That's just the short list, folks. Again, here's some of the shots of Alan and band doing their thing. A lot of people love the sound. We're going to talk about it. He's coming to us again high atop the city skyline in Manhattan today, just for all of you. If this is your first time here, welcome to our show. Let us know you're watching. We love having you here. Let's welcome Alan to the Jim Masters Show live for the first time, and I'm sure not the last. Alan, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thanks for having me, Jim. It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure is all mine. And I love, we were talking about, the pronunciation of the last name, and a lot of people pronounce all of our names however they want to do it. And it's Chapell, like in Dave, right?
Just like Dave. I think I'm a little funnier than he is, but
is he a distant cousin? Have you done DNA or?
We've gone back. It's funny. Not many people know this, but his ancestors trace back to the Ukraine, which is the same as mine.
That's right. Exactly. Which, if you dig deep enough, we're all related. We're all brothers, right?
And sisters, right?
Absolutely. So how do you grew up in Stamford, Connecticut. How did you balance music with, I would figure just being a technology, privacy, attorney, being involved in the world of law, that alone must consume your time, especially when it comes to privacy and everything that's going on in that world, the burgeoning world of AI and hacking and anything else that's going on. Very, very big, in the vernacular right now. But then you've got music too. How do you balance it all?
It all just sort of works out. So I'm a touring musician who, back in the mid to late 90s decided, maybe I'd give up music for a little bit and went to law school. And I just happened to study human rights law. And it just so happens that getting an advanced degree in human rights law is really helpful when dealing with consumer privacy issues. Because if you think about, from the perspective of human rights law, it's all about how do you get this large entity who is not legally compelled to do something? How do you get them to do it, to do the right thing? And privacy law is very similar. You replace big entity like the US with, Google. And how do you get Google to do the right thing? And there's a series of like levers that you can kind of try to do to push them, to urge them to do the right thing. But I'm just a musician who kind of fell over into this whole internet privacy thing. And one thing that I realized is that I can't just do the law. I have to continue to play music. And so really for the last, 12 to 15 years, I've been real focused, back on songwriting and touring and working with other musicians. And it just scratches an entirely different itch than the legal stuff does. And so I feel very fortunate I'm able to do both.
You're a Connecticut kid. So when growing up in Stamford, which again is like definitely for those not familiar with Stamford, Connecticut, it's grown exponentially. There's headquarters for NBC Sports there. One of my longtime dear friends and somebody I work with even to this day with a television news series we co-host in New York, my buddy Doug Llewellyn, who's been the host of the People's Court since the 80s. People's Court has filmed there, I believe, Judy. So many shows have come out of Stamford. But for you growing up, tell us about some of the influences, since it is so close to the city, but yet it has a multicultural base unto itself, Stamford, and how that influenced your music, what you were hearing, and sort of maybe set the stage for what you were going to be doing later on in the musical world.
Yeah. So the cool thing about growing up right next to New York City is that at a very young age, like, 12 or 13, you could pretty easily sneak your way into the city. And just walking around the West Village or even by CBGB's and like just sort of absorbing that whole scene was just really, really cool and really, really influential. And, the bands that I grew up really digging were, the Police and the Talking Heads and U2 and the Smiths and the Cure. And not all those bands are New York City bands, but all of them made their way through there. And you could catch a lot of great music just being in and around New York City. And when I lived in Bombay for a little while, playing with the band, and then got back from that, settled in Stamford again for about a minute, and then realized that I needed to do something different with my life. And so without a dime in my pocket, I moved to New York City, joined a couple of other bands, played around for a bit, and then eventually ended up in law school. And New York City has really been my primary home for a number of years now.
Well, you're saying the law school too, which is fascinating to me. Was that something that you also, had an interest in growing up too? Did the law also fascinate you? How did it come to be where law came into your life?
It's funny. Since I was 4 or 5, I can remember, I'd be talking to my grandma Sheridan, who grew up she was born in Ireland, but probably spent her last 80 years in Stamford. And she was wildly influential on me, both in terms of encouraging me to play my first concert, but also it's just, I don't know. And talking to her, we always just kind of decided that I was going to be a musician lawyer, which was sort of a weird combo back then. I mean, now it makes all the sense in the world, but then it really didn't make sense, and I thought I'd ultimately have to choose one or the other. But fortunately, I haven't had to.
Right. I'm sure the music probably balances things out for you too, right? Because it can get very detailed and very heady when you're doing the other part of your day. The music sort of is a release and can be very, very balancing for you, right?
I think so, but you might be surprised at how much bleed over there is from one to the other. Like the music brings out a level of creativity as I work with tech companies. And because really, if you're working with companies in that space, you got to be kind of on your toes, and you have to think differently. And the music kind of helps influence that. I tend to approach everything that I do in my work differently than most other lawyers might. And I think that's been a real advantage for me. And then similarly, I have an entire album which is dedicated to, thoughts about how the promise of the internet has sort of faded a little bit. And as companies needed to make money, there's sort of an impact about that. And so I guess the point I'm making here is that both sides sort of bleed into the other in some pretty interesting ways.
From your perspective, obviously being around prior to the internet explosion, how do you feel? And we'll get to the music in just a second, but just this fascinating to me about the internet and all that you do. How do you feel the internet is benefiting us, and how is it hurting us? I mean, some people say it's bringing us together, but at the same time, we're not, sitting across from each other at a diner having a tuna melt and a coffee, and that's sort of going away. How have you seen it develop in all the different aspects, positive, negative, and indifferent?
Well, I'll first maybe speak as a musician. The internet has allowed me to collaborate with people in ways that I never thought possible. The album I'm about to release in another month or two was recorded entirely where I was not only not in the same room as my band, I was in a different I was across in a different city. I was in California while my band was in a recording studio in Brooklyn. And through the internet, I was able to pipe in my vocals while the band was recording. And then I could kind of listen. And it was different. If I had a choice, I think I'd still rather be in the same room with the band. But given the pandemic, I wasn't able to be, and we were still able to create. And that's, you just can't put a price on that. The flip side of a lot of that stuff is that I think it is in some ways brought out our lesser angels and is sort of enabled a situation where, too many people are only interacting with people who agree with them. And by doing that, I think you end up in a little bit of a filter bubble, and it makes you less tolerant for alternative opinions and ideas. And that's just not a really good place to be.
I don't know about you, but it also seems like our society as a whole is very ramped up. And when I say ramped up, I don't mean just, there's all the division and all the frustration and all of the, thus versus them and all the rest. Even devoid of that, just people are rushed. They're talking faster. As somebody that's in an industry where talking is par for the course, sentences are chopped, they're shorter, everything is quick 5-second videos. People are going 10 times faster in their cars on the highways. People are, there's pushing and shoving in the stores. It's like, get out of my way, time is running out, keep going, come on. And some of that, I think, all of this technology and all these things that we have exposure to, we feel almost like we never have enough time to get through our day because we have all these things coming at us. It used to be a 9 to 5-ish kind of thing. And at 5:30, you can then go home to the family and do what you have to do. But now we're all like doctors on call. I mean, I get calls in my industry, TV, radio and all, 10 o'clock at night, Christmas Day, at a funeral. Hey, Jim, we need you for this. I'm like, I'm at a funeral. Can you at least give me about an hour? I'm actually carrying the casket right now. I'm a pallbearer. I'm carrying it. Give me an hour. But you know what I mean? It's just, I see this no time for anybody else's opinions, no time to listen, get out of my way. And you see it evidenced a lot of driving on the highways. It's just ramped up. Good, bad. How do we work through all of that too? We got to come back to some sort of a calm and get to the ocean and have time to at least swim in it.
Yeah, it's you're raising a great point, Jim. I remember when I was growing up, you were not allowed to call our home during dinner. My dad would not take a business call, at 6 o'clock at night. He just wouldn't. He would, and so as a result, like I can remember those days, and it's a sharp contrast to how things are today. Now, I feel very fortunate because I've chosen a life where I can do what I do from anywhere, and so that affords me the ability. Like, I can be working while I'm on tour. I was working at least part of the time. We went to Italy for a few weeks a month ago. We were in Nicaragua in December. I feel very fortunate that I'm able to make that choice. That now the downside to that is that I'm never really not working, and that's something that I struggle with. But this is where the music becomes a bit of a savior, because when I'm playing, then suddenly everything else is off. My right brain is engaged, and I'm just absolutely enjoying myself. And as I write on the weekends, usually I'll take 4 or 5 hours and just wander around the West Village of New York or around the houseboat community of Sausalito, and won't really have my phone with me. I'll just be there kind of thinking about lyrics and melodies, and it's a wonderful, wonderful way to unplug, and I'm grateful to have that.
How has the speed of life affected your music at all? Has it affected the style, what it is that you're sharing with all of us? Have you morphed, tweaked, any of it changed as things have changed throughout the year? So have you always stayed true to form, to the style, the sound that you want to share with everybody?
Yeah, so for me, it has influenced it, but maybe not in the way that you would think. I think that it's influenced it in the opposite way, where it's, I think, even more important to me. Like, I'm not the most catchy hook guy, where there's a certain formula now that if you don't have the hook in 15 seconds, people are going to turn it off. What I'm doing is encouraging the audience to listen, because there's a story in every single song, and I'm encouraging the audience to participate in that song with me. And sometimes that involves a little bit of work, but I promise you that there's a payoff at the end of it.
So singing, songwriting, being a musician, is there one thing, producer, all of it, is there one thing that is first and core to your heart and soul, or do you like everything equally, just the entire experience?
I think I like everything equally, with one exception. I'm also the parent of a 4-year-old, and that really comes first. And it's wonderful because you have somebody who who just comes at you with love, with absolutely no nothing but love and affection, and it's really cute. We have videos of her at 2 attending a concert of mine and singing along, and it's just really, really adorable.
And how you pull the inspiration from your child, I'm sure, into the music in certain subtle ways, huh?
Oh, and sometimes not so subtle. So my last album, which called Two Fishes, and I'm not trying to do some big like concept album, but the idea between Two Fishes was I have a daughter, Kylie, who's in her 20s and was born, sort of a child of 9/11, and my daughter Rose, who's 4, is a child of the COVID pandemic. And so I wrote an album that sort of juxtaposed their 2 lives and how their situations being at the same time, very similar, yet very different.
What an interesting way to link the 2 of them. And years from now, they'll be listening to that again. And that's a wonderful gift that you've given, well, everybody, all of us, but them specifically, huh?
Yeah, and to myself, it's a gift to myself, because it allows you to explore, how you're feeling. And like, I look back at, 25 years ago, and I was a very different person, maybe not better, maybe not worse, but different. And so everything there and so it allowed me to relive some of that stuff. And some of that was kind of painful, but I felt like it enabled me to come out the other side in a better place.
How did you find the others the bandmates and others who join you in studio and on stage? How did you put all that together? That's a whole process unto itself.
It is. So, New York City is wonderful because there's just no shortage of ridiculously talented and creative musicians. And so once you sort of get into that scene and start working with people who are talented, well, they know other people who are talented. And so the first person I started working with was guitarist Ann Klein. And honestly, we met through Craigslist. I mean, that's sort of the new, back in the day, you used to meet first via the Village Voice personals. But Ann and I, met via Craigslist. Shared a couple of songs and really hit it off and started working together. And then, we went through a couple of different musicians, but Ann pretty quickly brought in her friend Lorenza Ponce, Grammy Award winner Lorenza Ponce on violin. And Lorenza is absolutely a monster talent and allows me to both explore my inner 80s musician, because she plays with pedals, and you'll get a little bit of a synth type of a thing going on, but she'll also play kind of a classic fiddle, which is kind of cool.
Oh, that is cool. Now is that your child in the back?
That would be Rose.
I was gonna.
She may make a cameo. There's really nothing you can do.
No, it's fantastic. Some wonderful sounds that can easily be incorporated into song and into music. What was the very first instrument, Alan, that you learned? What did you take up first?
So there's sort of a funny story there, because the first instrument I learned was trumpet, but I had initially taken up the clarinet. There was a wonderful program in Stamford. I don't think it's around anymore. It was in an old school called Rice, which I think now is the UBS headquarters. So that tells you how many things have changed.
Right off I-95.
Yeah. And so they had a thing called Project Music, where the best music teachers in I think all of Connecticut would donate their time to allow, to give kids lessons. And so my 2 older brothers were one was taking clarinet, the other was taking trumpet. And you know how alliances develop within young boys. That week I was into the brother who's playing clarinet. So I decided, well, I'm going to be a clarinet player. But I was like 3. And the starting age for that thing might have been 5.
3.
So I go in there, and I'm just about to take my first lesson. I open up my case. I'm looking at the clarinet. I'm really excited. And they say, "Oh, Alan, it's time for your lesson." I get up. Of course, I didn't close the case. The clarinet spills all over the floor just as the person running Project Music walks by. And then, as you might imagine, he started asking questions like, "How old are you?" Long story short, that was the end of my clarinet playing. The next year, they let me in, but as a trumpet player. And then I ended up playing trumpet for like 10, 15 years.
So that was age 4?
Yeah.
Prodigy. Do we hear the word prodigy coming in here? That's amazing. And did you stay with trumpet? Was that something that you really enjoyed and continued with as far as training?
The trouble I had with the trumpet was like once you're 16 or 17 and you're done playing like jazz band stuff, it's hard to keep up, particularly when you just want to write songs and play the piano. And you can't play trumpet a little bit. If you put the trumpet down for like a month, you're half as good as you were.
Yeah.
And so unfortunately, I gave it up. But for a long time, I would have trumpet players in my band Chapell because I loved writing for the instrument. And I had a bunch of really monster talented guys like Sharif Clayton on the horn, a bunch of other folks, and grateful to have them be able to collaborate and write with them.
You've had an opportunity to collaborate and work with so many extraordinary people. Tell us about, and I mentioned it, sprinkled it into the introduction a little bit, some of the people you've worked with, you've had an opportunity to share, studio stage with, but also collaborate with. That must be fun to do that and to bounce ideas off others, either legends in the industry or up and coming, whatever it may be. What's that like? And tell us about some of the cool people you've had an opportunity to work with.
Well, yeah, I mean, you kind of have to start that conversation with Jerry Harrison, who's, I guess, best known as the guitarist and keyboardist of Talking Heads, but he's also done, he's been a producer. He did No Doubt. He's done a whole bunch of other bands and won Grammys. And the thing I really dig about Jerry is he's got the music side down, but he's also kind of an interesting entrepreneur. And he's the person that I met him maybe 10 years ago, 12 years ago. And he gave me license really to feel comfortable sharing that I am both a musician and an entrepreneur. And it may seem kind of silly now, but there was a time where I felt a little uncomfortable talking about that kinds of stuff. My dad grew up a jazz musician and a card player, and you didn't mention either of those things within, General Foods, where he worked for 20, 25 years. Like that stuff never got mentioned. And that's what I grew up in, because like, no, you can do this or that. And if you do this on music thing on the side, that's cool, but keep it on the down low. And Jerry sort of opened my eyes to the idea that at least today we now have the freedom. And for me, it's an asset. When I talk to, people in the digital media industry where I work, usually the first question is, okay, when's the next album coming? How's the music going?
Mm-hmm.
It's an asset, something to talk about. And so I feel really, really fortunate that I'm able to do that now. But so Jerry has been, wildly influential for me because he showed me, he's a brilliant producer. I spent on and off a couple of years recording my first album, The Redhead's Allegations, with Jerry and E.T. Thorngren, who's sort of Jerry's right-hand co-producer. And I learned so much in that process around how you need to record an album. Because I was doing it, for years. You'd go in, like, some of it is just, when I was really young, I didn't have any money. And so you go in and like half a day of studio time is, if you can't get Jimmy Einer to pay for your studio time, then you're kind of limited. But you'd go in, you'd record things at breakneck speed, you'd make all kinds of mistakes, and you'd hope for the best. And if you're going to make a real album, you need to let's do 10 takes and find the right one. And then maybe you need to rewrite something because it isn't working the right way. And so there's a whole process behind there that really he opened my eyes to. And then on the entrepreneur front, he might have opened my eyes even a little bit more. I mean, he's one of these guys, I call him the Wizard of Oz. And the reason I say that is he's the kind of cat that can get you to believe in yourself, even when you don't believe in yourself. He can get you to. And he's the kind of guy that we were a part of like a just shoot the breeze, drink wine session at his house, and one of my friends kind of sheepishly mentioned that he thinks he's discovered a universal antidote to snake bites, believe it or not. And Jerry took him aside and mentored him. And now this guy, and I helped a little bit, and Jerry and I invested together in this company called Ophirix. But they've now, they've discovered something that will cure like 100 different types of snake venoms. And it's one of those things that doesn't get talked a lot about, but the number of people in India alone who die or have a limb removed, is in the hundreds of thousands every year. It's an absolutely staggering statistic. And because Jerry saw something and mentored somebody, the world has been able to discover this thing. And man, what a gift.
That's incredible. Who are some of the folks that you were inspired by coming up the ranks, whether you've had an opportunity to collaborate them, work with them, or just people that you heard on the radio, whatever it is? Who are some of those sounds and those people that just really did it for you, Alan?
I thought that, Robert Smith and The Cure, always brilliant, but there are 3 or 4 albums in particular. Kiss Me 3 would be one where I was like, yes, that's the thing I want. That's the thing I'm going for. The Police and with Stuart Copeland and really the whole band are just absolutely brilliant, and still like somehow almost underrated or underappreciated just how brilliant those guys were. Of course, Talking Heads, and I'm a big fan of David Byrne and Jerry. And I knew Chris and Tina years ago. They used to come see my band play, and just wonderful to have any affiliation with people that talented. And then the Modern Lovers. That's actually Jerry's other band that made it into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Those guys are just so talented.
We came over there and we listened to your stereo or your boom box or your iPod, whatever it may be. What would be in it?
Oh, so we've got a couple of different things. So and it sort of depends on the mood. But my wife is from Nicaragua, so we do have a playlist of kind of what we call Latin American folk songs. And we'll throw in a couple of songs by an indie band called Café Tacuba, which is a little more indie rock, but somehow they get put into that playlist. I've got a playlist of all the bands that I grew up and loved. I've got a playlist of bands like Everclear and Jackopearce and Gin Blossoms, who I've been fortunate enough to play shows with. And then I've got kind of an indie rock and an indie folk playlist. And so I try to run the gamut a little bit. But I'll tell you this, the one thing that I would love to have that I don't is a little bit more music discovery. And some of that is just work. There's too many things going on in life. But it takes work to, there was a time a couple of years ago when I lived in Greenpoint, Brooklyn. I had a 28-year-old friend who was just crazy into music. And that dude, Ben Rubin, say Ben, hi Ben, introduced me to so many wonderful bands and that I never would have heard of before. And we were pretty close for about a year, and then he's now in Austin, and I'm still here in New York. But everybody needs a 28-year-old friend who lives in Greenpoint, Brooklyn, I guess is my point.
There is, and we've had these conversations with a lot of folks who come from Brooklyn. There's something in the water in Brooklyn, isn't there? Think of the people that Streisand, Barry Manilow, Neil Diamond, so many people that have come out of Brooklyn, New York.
Well, yeah, it's so funny because, so I grew up thinking that the East Village was the absolute epicenter of music in the world. And there's some truth to that when I was growing up. But I was also fortunate enough to live in Greenpoint and Williamsburg, Brooklyn in the early aughts when there was some really cool stuff. I would go as far as to say as that was the epicenter of new music. I used to go to these rent parties down on just below the Williamsburg Bridge where these artists they'd have like 300 people packed into their loft. And the whole thing was designed around a stage in the far end. And this band called Dynasty Electric would headline at like 4 a.m. And they would get bands from Japan and really all around the world, all around the country and they turn this into just an absolute event. And every time I go to one of those things, I'd be thinking, you know what, this is the new CBGBs.
That's really, really cool. How do you, for folks who are watching right now and they're discovering you and the music, how do you describe the Chapell sound? What is the Chapell sound?
Yeah, so, if you took like an 80s and 90s influenced indie rock thing and then somehow mix it in there with Billy Joel. And the reason, it's funny, my wife and I just watched his 100th residency concert.
The re-air?
Yeah.
With the full thing?
And the thing about him is an absolute genius about creating stories. And a lot of them were stories about New York. So I have an additional bonus points.
A Long Island kid. Yep.
Yeah. But an absolute genius. And really that's what I try to do. I try to, let's find a story about two people who happen to be in this one situation. Or here's something that was influenced by a dive bar I used to go to in the West Village, and an old guy named Lenny who used to like just sit at the bar every time I was in there. And because that's the type of thing that connects people. There's always going to be a place for like the, boy meets girl, boy loves girl thing. And I do a little bit of that. But for me, where it's at are like the connections in the stories.
Because, we described you are a musical storyteller. You love through the music to weave these stories, right? And that's very, very cool.
Yeah, I feel really fortunate. And one of the, in life, there's almost always a silver lining. And sometimes it takes a while to see it. And sometimes it's difficult to see it because there's too much bad stuff going on. And so, during the pandemic, there was a lot of, as there were people dying, there were people whose lives were changing. As a musician, there weren't really any opportunities to play. And for a while, it was even difficult to rehearse with my band. And I'm not doing a woe is me type of thing, but that's just the reality. But one of the things that came out of that towards like the second half of the pandemic is as bands like Gin Blossoms would start to creep back out and tour, was that there was a heck of a lot of appetite for me as a solo artist as an opener. And now the downside was that I wasn't able to bring my band along a lot of times, but I got a lot of gigs playing as a solo artist. And when you play as a solo artist, by definition, it ends up becoming a lot more conversational. And I would, when you've got a whole band kind of milling around you, your ability to tell stories is just different. But if it's just you, just me playing the piano, you're in my living room, man. You're going to hear here's what this song was really about. And here's, what I was thinking about the first time I played this and that kinds of stuff. And that's fun. So I felt really grateful to be able to do that.
It adds a certain depth to it. You appreciate it more whenever you hear the backstory. That's why I say even this show, I don't call these interviews, even though that's a word everybody uses for branding with everything, interview, but they're really free-flowing conversations. I think when you have conversations, when you tell stories, people connect with them. They find little bits within them that they can relate to about their own lives, their own experiences, their own risks and rewards and failures and everything. When they hear how things were put together, that things that they love, things that they admire, things that bring them joy and that please them, and they realize all that it takes to put it together. And sometimes it comes naturally quick, but a lot of times it takes a lot of rewrite and a lot of redo and a lot of trial and error to make these things magical for everybody to enjoy. So it's really cool to get a chance to hear the backstories, and I'm sure you get a lot of people that are amazed by them, right?
I think the word I would say is that people are able to relate. Because sometimes even if you like the song, you aren't necessarily focused on what it might be about. And so if you get even a story starting off the song, and even if it's not telling you exactly what it's about, you're able to provide a frame of reference to people, and that's really helpful. I think it increases people's enjoyment. It gives them a point to focus on that's above the dance all night, you got the hook and all. But if you know that this is not just some trite love song, but it's like a grown-up love song. It's It's a song about people who tried to get together way back when and weren't able to, but now have reconnected, and how beautiful that is.
It's so true. Absolutely. And there's a lot of beauty in it. I want to let folks know on a level, talking about what we talked about earlier, going back to what we talked about earlier. You founded Chapell and Associates in 2003, and that firm has helped hundreds of marketing, technology, and media companies really create value and sort of monetize the digital and identifiable data in an ethical, privacy safe way. One of our viewers had asked if you if you had any connection to Chapell music, like Warner Chapell, anything in that connection. I guess if you dig deep, you never know.
Well, so it's funny you ask. There were in 1910, there were approximately 100 different people with the last name Jackopearce in Milford, Connecticut. Not a single one of them keeps in touch now, 100 years later, 120 years later. Most of them have changed their name, not all of them. Some of them spell it with two P's. Some will throw an E at the end, like my buddy Dave Chapell. So there's some spelling irregularities. So I have no idea. For all I know, I could be related to Chapell Warner, and maybe that'll, because I use the record label name Chapell Music, and maybe if we're related, that'll keep them from suing me. I don't know.
Hey, you said your father worked for General Foods. Did you get a chance to have all the cereals that you wanted, your favorites when you were a kid? Because he had connections.
We didn't get that, but before General Foods, my dad worked at Canada Dry.
Yeah.
So, and you know him for ginger ale and all, but they had a division back in like the 70s and 80s who did nothing but find to try to create experimental sodas. Because you remember back then, it was like, cola and ginger ale, and then, maybe a berry punch or whatever.
Root beer, right.
Yeah,
cream soda. Yeah.
But so we were drinking chocolate soda before Yoo-hoo was invented. Right. We were drinking banana soda. We had a guy named Arthur Karatzis. I have no idea why I remember this guy's name, but God bless him, because every time he would show up at our house, we'd get another case of like experimental soda. So that was the hookup we got. We didn't get much in the way of cereal, but soda we did get.
So also too, which I think is quite fascinating, the balance of the work that you do. In addition to the music, you're a widely recognized thought leader on interactive ecosystems, and you're regularly quoted and often as a requested speaker on these themes. You're on the board, or at least a member of, just about every significant industry trade association that focuses on interactive media, advertising, or privacy, including network advertising initiatives as well, Mobile Marketing Association, World Wide Web Consortium, International Association of Privacy Professionals, Digital Advertising Alliance, and you were appointed by the U.S. Trustee's Office to serve as a privacy ombudsman in almost 20 separate bankruptcies, including Chrysler, General Motors, St. Vincent's, and Eddie Bauer's bankruptcy proceedings as well. Now that's quite fascinating. Those are major companies, legendary companies. What's it like to be involved in that aspect of what you do?
Well, that was sort of a fun one, because that allows me to feel like a real lawyer. Because when you're advising, a court, on whether or not General Motors should be allowed to transfer the personal data of their dealerships or of their customers, you got to go into court. You got to wear a suit. You're not in the T-shirt that I'm in now. It allowed me to exercise an entirely different side of my legal chops, which was kind of fun. And I've been fortunate to do, 20, 25 of those over the years. And some of them were pretty big. I mean, the St. Vincent's one for me was kind of heartbreaking because I lived around the corner from there at the time. My daughter Kylie was born in St. Vincent's, and I felt like it was just really part of the community. And through a whole series of bad luck and bad decisions, it kind of got ripped out of the community. And it's just sad to see that happen. But the rest of the stuff, I feel fortunate. It's fun. If you want to try to build a business, not having ever worked at like a law firm, well, you need to be out there talking to people. And I was able to find a platform where enough people wanted to hear me speak and were interested enough in what I had to say that it was really, really, it's been really, really fortunate.
How has the legalese that you're exposed to and having the background helped you with your music, preserving it, protecting it? I'm sure it comes in, all the time for you.
Oh, yeah. It's funny you say that. Like at the end of the day, I think the legal skill might have been more helpful back in the days of like the big record companies and distribution. Because nowadays, I'm not negotiating with Spotify. I'm not negotiating with Apple Music. I'm not even negotiating with TuneCore. You just got to kind of accept the terms that they've laid out. And there's pluses and minuses to all that. I mean, the good news is sure is easy to enable people to the opportunity to hear your music. The downside to that is like figuring out the algorithm and how that works is back in the day, you could just find a DJ and maybe buy him a bag of weed or something like that, and maybe play your song. And now you can't really do that with an algorithm. And so, there's pluses and minuses to all this. One of the things that really struck me, having had some discussions with some of the guys who formed Napster back in the day, is they really thought at the time that they were overturning the big evil empire of the record industry. There were some challenges to that model overall, but what I think they found is that what took its place might have been worse.
Yes, remember Napster? That was something. Napster, and then people making copies of Blockbuster videos and selling them, and then of course when the VCR came out and the ways to record things and duplicate things off the air or just duplicate things, that was a whole other. You always have to be a step ahead or at least sweeping things up after, right? With technology.
Yeah. I mean, it's the thing that I deal with mostly is that anytime you're interacting with the Spotify or a Facebook or any website you visit, in order to like make all that magic happen in the background, there's data that gets collected, and whenever there's data that gets collected, there's the ability to use that data. Some of it's for good purposes, some of it's for bad purposes, and a lot of it is sort of in this squishy gray area of like, should we really be doing this stuff? And so that's where I've operated the last 20 years or so, is the squishy gray area of, we can do this, but should we? And we have to recognize that businesses need to make money. That's just that's just how it is. But are there limits to that? And are there guardrails? Are there things that maybe they shouldn't be doing?
When John DiNicola was with us, another fabulous music veteran, just a couple of nights ago, and for those watching, I encourage you to watch that episode. It was a fantastic conversation. He was upstate New York in his barn. He gave us a tour of the studio with all the equipment and everything. And he's the co-writer of "I've Had the Time of My Life," that amazing song from Dirty Dancing, and "Hungry Eyes" that Eric Carmen made popular from Dirty Dancing, and so much more. And he was comparing, he loves analog. He's an analog guy. He loves the warmth. I love analog too, but he loves the depth and the warmth and the expansive nature of analog. He was also talking about what it was like in the music industry as he was coming up versus now, when you do have the Spotifys and things of that nature, how much harder it is now. You get more exposure, but how much harder it is to earn a living and keep afloat, because you get point zero when the song is played or downloaded or whatever. It's a totally different beast, totally different world now versus what it was before, with all the merchandising and everything else.
Yeah, it's funny. I think there's some trade-offs there. Like I think, the reality is such that you no longer have nearly the amount of licensing money available by the nature of, Spotify isn't paying what the radio stations did at one time. And so, and that's a huge challenge that a lot of guys, that we all need to face. And, but, there's other ways that people are able to make money. And I feel like, people are able to make money on tours now in a way that I don't think they necessarily were. I know this is, some of the old school musicians still frown upon this, but like you can make money with, doing commercials, whether it's the jingle space or, allow your likeness to endorse something. And that's, different people have different feelings about that. But like, when you don't have the other money, it's hard, available to you. It's, hard to be too picky.
I mentioned you dabbled in the jingle world. I've always loved jingles. Yeah, the sun is going down in the Big Apple.
So here we are in green.
He had a. I mean, are you able to turn that around so they can see the view and everything?
Sure.
He's got a beautiful skyline view. Look at this. Moved. Actually, that's nice now. Now the lighting is good. Let's see.
Yeah, it works, doesn't it? All right. So we just moved, and so the place is still a little bit of a work in progress. But
so what part of the city are you in right now? Nice.
So we're in Tribeca now. So it's like we literally moved exactly a mile down Greenwich Street. I've been in the West Village for a long time and love it. But we needed a little bit of a different space. Maybe needed a little more room. I get an office and music studio now in the deal, so that's okay.
That's really cool. And you're going back and forth to California too, as well.
We do. We bounce back and forth. So one of the byproducts of working with Jerry Harrison for anybody really over like the last 20 years is that he had a studio that was right across from the houseboat community in Sausalito, and he said, "Listen, I don't know how long this is going to last, but whatever you do, spend a couple of weeks renting a houseboat." And I did. And it was just such a wonderful experience. And long story short, I ended up getting the last super affordable houseboat in all of Sausalito because the woman wanted to move out. And so we've been fortunate that we went there during the COVID pandemic. We spent a lot of our summers out there. And Sausalito has a lot going for it and has a very, very rich musical history. But more recently, it is the only place that I know of that continued to have live music throughout the pandemic. And the way they pulled that off is they would have somebody put their band on the back of a houseboat or on the back of a boat somewhere in Richardson Bay just off of San Francisco. And you would have 100 different kayaks, small motorboats, pedal boats, different weird boats that might as well have been like in a Dr. Seuss episode. And they'd all come and they'd listen to the music. And it was absolutely a wonderful, wonderful experience. And I say that both as someone who's played, and it was a blast, but even to just go and participate in that. And that community last year said, well, we're not just going to do music, but they did Shakespeare. They did A Midsummer Night's Dream on the back of one of those houseboats. And I think you had 200 people there for that show. It's just a wonderful, wonderful community.
How fantastic that is, huh? Now, you've had an opportunity, in addition to creating the music, but also performing it live. Tell us about that, some of the incredible places you've had an opportunity to perform, and what is it like, on stage for you? Some people prefer the stage, some people prefer being in the studio. Do you have a preference? Do you like to be out there amongst the fans and feel that energy of the crowd?
Yeah, I wouldn't trade in one for the other. I think they're different and I love them both, but there's nothing better than being in a full, in a packed house. And oftentimes if you're an opener, you're in a packed house where half the people have never heard of you before. And so, the reaction you're getting for the first couple of songs, and then you compare that to the reaction you're getting in the last couple of songs. And wow, is that just a fantastic feeling. Where you're able to get people to play around with you and joke around a little bit, a completely or a mostly cold audience. It's just a wonderful feeling. The studio is its own thing. There's just nothing cooler than being in a room full of talented musicians. And usually what I do with my band is I'll take everybody away for 3 or 4 days. get out of the city. We'll either go up into there's a place up in Connecticut that we've gone to a couple of times. We've also done Dreamland in upstate New York. But I like the summer camp vibe, where you get people away from it and you do a communal dinner, and then everybody kind of gets to share stories. And by the end of it, you feel even tighter and closer with your band. And for me, selfishly, that's a whole lot of fun. But I also think it makes for better music.
Some of the folks in the band with you, tell us about that camaraderie. It becomes like brothers and sisters. It becomes like family. You're on the road, you're in the studio, you're amongst everybody, and whether you're touring or just seeing a couple of gigs here and there, it becomes very, very deep and very, very close. It's almost hard to even put it in words, that relationship, because you're counting on each other when you're on stage, but even prior, just getting prepared and putting the whole thing together. Right?
Yeah, and you can even, when I go out and check out other bands, you can kind of get a sense of like, is this band really connected? Is there a tightness here? Or or did the singer and guitarist just have a big fight before they went on stage? The audience can kind of feel.
Some of them will even smash the guitar in front of it. Boom.
Exactly.
That wasn't rehearsed, everybody.
Right. But with my guys, it's funny. Like they'll, there's a ton of love. There's sometimes a little bit of a brother and sister argument. I remember we were backstage somewhere. I think it was at Fairfield, and there was a debate about whether or not it was a good idea to have the space program, and it's kind of funny. Like you wouldn't think that doesn't sound very rock and roll.
How did that? Yeah.
It got kind of heated.
I can see, right?
And there was a whole bunch of, and then finally I had to go, okay, guys, we have to remember we love each other. And then everybody, because these are wonderful people, and everybody just kind of laughed at themselves for a minute. Then we got back into it, and we went out and had a great show there.
We were just upstate New York. We drove the 3 hours up to Bethel. And because Anson Williams, who played Potsy on Happy Days, and legendary Lee Purcell and Anson's wife, Sharon, they were putting on a one-woman play with Lee Purcell acting out 14 different characters. And the play is about Anson Williams' wife, Sharon's mother, who was called, Crazy Mama. And she was, had a lot of different things about her personality. But Lee took on one-woman stage at the Bethel Woods Art Center, these incredible characters, all 14 of them, really, having conversations with one another. It was fantastic, and to see everybody. But on those grounds of Woodstock, have you had a chance to go there and mingle around those grounds in upstate New York?
So no, we've been sort of near. We haven't been on the wood like at Woodstock, but we did play. We did do Dreamland, which is right by there, which is a really, really cool recording studio. I think I recorded my penultimate was the name of the album that we did there, and that was it was a lot of fun. That's just kind of a neat community too. They've got a couple of really cool. Is it the Bearsville Theater up there?
And there's a whole museum too at the Bethel Arts Center. A whole fabulous museum about that day and everything, that whole time period, which is fantastic. It's really something. A lot of artisan, foods and farm to table and a lot of that kind of stuff. I think John was saying he's in Nicola. He's about an hour, maybe shy of an hour from there, but just really, really cool to go up there. Tell us about the music and, where people can find it and some of the albums and the material that you have, and also things that you're excited about, you're working on that people can look forward to as well.
Sure. We haven't talked much about this, but my 7th album, it's called The Underground Music Show, and that'll be out in June. I think we'll drop singles a little bit before then, but the album itself will be out in, I think, late June. And super excited about that. That was the album that we ended up recording where I actually was in California and the band was in New York. And it's been a bit of a labor of love over the last couple of years, but boy, am I just really, really excited about this album. I think it's my best one yet. I felt like I was able to bring out the best in my entire band, and we've gotten some really good feedback from it. And we're not quite ready to announce, but there's going to be a tour this summer, and I'm really, really looking forward to it. So where can you find me? I've got a website, thisischapell.com. You should be able to find Chapell on Spotify and all the music streaming services. Chapell Music is what we go under on Facebook, Insta. I think it's This Is Chapell, so we're about to start really gearing up some of the promo for the summer stuff. It's such a funny thing. You have to like almost shift out of like cerebral studio writing guy, and then really try to take over the game show host component of promoting yourself for getting the album out. And so I'm writing.
Do you like that part or not so much?
I like writing. I mean, I like being out talking to people. The self-promotion thing, is probably not my favorite, but it's just sort of a necessary thing, because you're not going to be able to play in front of large crowds if you're not going to push stuff.
It's all part of it, right? It's just,
yeah.
And it because you're, the legal part of things, marketing and advertising and branding and the importance of all of that as well. You've been doing this since you were a kid, 3 years old and up. Your father, of course, in the music world as well, too. And when you look at all of it, it's a beautiful thing. You've balanced a wonderful legal career with music and never gave up on it. Why does it bring you such continued joy? Why do you like creating it and designing it for the pleasure of all of us? And what do you hope we're left with when we hear your music? There's so much stuff out there. What is it about what's your story, your mission in doing the music for all of us? What do you hope we're left with when we hear your music?
I hope people are left with the feeling that you can connect, you can relate with the people that I'm talking about, because the people I'm talking about are you. So what I hope is that at the end of all of this, that there's some wonderful stories that people have in their brain that they were able to enjoy. I feel fortunate that I've been able to do this. Why do I keep doing it? Because it's the most difficult thing ever. You can do really well on one song, and then you start writing another one, and you're kind of back down into at the bottom of the ocean.
Do you ever have writer's block at all? Do you ever get stuck and have to walk away from it and then plug back in?
I do, and occasionally. So the thing that I'm trying to learn is that like sometimes you have to let the song come to you a little bit. And not try to force it. Because look, you can come up with lyrics that match and they're okay. But if you're really trying to create something special, sometimes you have to be a little bit more patient. The other thing is sometimes the first thing you come up with, the first guitar hook is the right thing. Sometimes it isn't. And the whole challenge of this is trying to determine which is which. Is this the right thing, or should I be out there looking for something different? And so I like the chase. I like chasing the next song, trying to find the next set of lyrics. For me, that's everything.
It's interesting because we were talking with a couple of previous guests about it really takes something to create new music, because there's only a certain amount of chords available, but yet to be able to create. A couple of the guests have said, well, when we are artists and musicians and songwriters and all of it, we've heard just about everything you can hear since childhood, all the different kinds of music, the genres, the way they're done, interpretations, all of it. So we're always going to have some sort of an influence of what we've heard. It's how we're able to take that and sort of finesse it and create something that's fresh from that. How do you do that when there are limited chords and so much music has already been created? How do you create something that is stand out or unique or different?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think some of it is just coming at things from a different place. You talk about writer's block. One time about 10 years ago, I was going through a little bit of writer's block, And what I decided to do was just learn to play the ukulele. Now, in fairness, I was living in Greenpoint, Brooklyn, and I think by law you had to learn to play ukulele if you were going to live in Greenpoint at that point. But
either that or you better know how to make bagels or pizza.
For sure. But what was cool is that when you're playing it, I grew up as a piano player. When you're doing it on a different instrument, your appreciation for how the C to F go together is very different. And if you only have 4 strings, you have to be a little bit more creative. And so and that opened up a whole new. I wrote almost an entire album just based on just little riffs that I put together on the ukulele. And so that's really the trick, is to try to come at things from different places. And it might be as simple as just not starting with the piano, but starting with the whirly, or starting with the Rhodes, and because those just going through those 3 things will give you a very different perspective on where the song's going to come from.
Absolutely. That's a great way to answer that question. Why does it bring you such blessing and joy? We talked about what you hope people are left with, but you as the creator, what is it doing for you inside?
Well, it's just very cathartic. I think I've had times in my life where if I hadn't been able to get something out of me by writing a song, I'm not sure I would have gotten through it. So for me, there's that almost mental health component to a lot of this. But on top of that, man, I get to create stuff. I get to say, I remember where I was when I came up with this idea, and I sang it into my phone because I wasn't in a place where I could do that. And then a month later, I came back to it, and I remember us playing it on the piano. And it's almost like creating a child. You can remember every single step in the development of this being, from its initial conception to the point where you're now listening to it on the radio or on Spotify or wherever. That's just super cool. What a blessing.
Yeah, it really, really is. As was this conversation, my friend. Next time we have you back, because I always keep the porch light on for everybody, as I say, maybe we'll have some music going and everything. And what I think about this conversation that's also cool is that we actually have behind you an actual UFO sighting, something glowing and hanging behind.
Oh, do you like that? That's the light in the room. Yeah, it's definitely.
We'll
tell everybody it's a UFO.
Right.
It's a UFO sighted right
coming to us from Area 51 or.
Exactly.
He says it's New York City. That's just a backdrop. That's a green screen. Sometimes it does feel like that, right? The world sometimes does feel a little crazy and nutty, but it's how you get through it and doing it together. Doing it all together. Everything needs to be together in order for the earth to continue to spin on its axis. Great conversation, my friend. And there is the website, everybody. Check it out. You can see there's a gallery of great videos, and there's all kinds of cool things. And also on Spotify and everything else. And look for more of Alan and Chapell Band. And thanks for stopping by, Alan. I hope you enjoyed yourself and the time with me as much as I certainly have with you, my friend.
Well, thanks, Jim. This was a pleasure. This was a lot of fun, so I appreciate you having me on.
Oh, absolutely. You talked about your dad. One thing that my dad has always said and told me, you'll appreciate this. My dad grew up in New York City as well. And he said, when I was 7 years old, talk about these inspirations when we're children. He said, Jim, or in this case, Jimmy, because I'm like the 5th James, Jimmy, whenever anybody says something kind or nice to you, be sure and always thank them for those kind words. Then ask them to please put those words in writing and address it management. 7 years old and it still holds true.
Yeah.
Alan, be well, my friend. Hopefully we'll see you, performing, because we're here in the New York tri-state area. So let's stay connected. Keep me posted on all the cool things that are happening. And you are absolutely welcome back here at what we call Lovety Hall, Love and Laughter Together, the Jim Masters Show. Come see us again and spread the word about our show, okay?
Thanks. Will do, Jim. This was a pleasure. Have a good one, my friend.
Pleasure is all mine. You be well. You going to make a sandwich now? I always ask the guests, you going to make a sandwich? You've sung for your supper. We'll see you soon. Be well. Alan Chapell here on the Jim Masters Show, coming to us from New York City. And I really advise you to check out the music. You can go to the website. There it is. This is Chapell.com. And of course, they're all on social media, as well as Spotify and iTunes and all the places where you find music. Phenomenal sound. I was hearing a lot of it in preparation for this conversation, and I think you're going to fall in love with it and want to add it to your collection. He's got more music coming out, which we're really excited about. And you got a chance to hear about, you know, what inspires him, what drives him, some of those early inspirations too. Doing this since 3 years old, but of course his dad being not only working for General Foods and Canada Dry before that, but also in the music world. So he had some of those early sounds and influences in his home, which I think is really, really cool. There you go. And so, yeah, it's an amazing opportunity to always hear about fantastic people who are working to make our world a better place. And Alan and the band are doing it through music. And I think it's really, really cool. Everybody watching here, thanks for all of these fantastic comments. We've had comments coming in throughout our broadcast. Now, this broadcast, of course, is live, but it's also archived on our YouTube channel, Jim Masters TV. So you can share the links. Matter of fact, if you enjoyed this episode and the hundreds and hundreds of celebrity guests and friends who've stopped by the Jim Masters Show Live series, give this episode a thumbs up, like on our YouTube channel, share it on your social media. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Jim Masters TV. Doesn't cost anything. Click the notification bell so you're notified about the episodes, and leave a comment in the comments section. And all of you around the world who have been doing that, we thank you so very, very much for doing that. That means the world to us. So another great show and another great artist celebrated here. A new friend to the Jim Masters Show Live series, and we hope you enjoyed this episode. Definitely interact with us, whether you're watching live or you're watching Memorex, meaning recorded in the archives. We'll see you again soon. Tomorrow we have another great guest. We have Stan Zimmerman. Stan Zimmerman, television writer for The Golden Girls. He wrote for Roseanne, the series, Gilmore Girls, and so much more. He's going to talk about his epic television career and all the other cool things he's working on. He's got a new book out, sort of behind the scenes of some of your favorite TV series. That's going to be tomorrow. That's actually going to be earlier. We're going to be on at 4 Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. And then you know who's joining us on Friday? Elvis Aaron Presley Jr. Elvis Presley's son, Elvis Aaron Presley Jr. is going to be here Friday live, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. We're working hard with all the guests and all the production and everything we do behind the scenes to put smiles on your face and bring you levity as well. Thanks for all the great comments, everybody. Good to see everybody. Appreciate all the regulars. And Kayleen, hey, another fabulous, epic person in the music world. She was a guest on our show as well. She loved it. She loved the conversation. Kathleen in New York City also as well. Thank you, Kathleen and Jane in Sweden. And Cheyenne Smith, you're very, very welcome. Thanks so much for this. The pleasure is all ours. Very, very, very nice. Merlin in Canada, love the conversation. Fantastic. Glad that you did. And everybody else commenting, continue to comment in our comments section as well here on the Jim Masters Show Live series. We'll see you on the next episode. Don't forget, love one another, take care of one another, and take time to love and take care of yourself. Very important to do that. Jim Masters here, thanking you for your time this time. Till next time, come see us again. I'll be right here waiting for you in Levity Hall and the Jim Masters Show. Be well. Cheers.